Do you struggle getting defensive in your relationship? Your partner can't tell you any constructive feedback without you justifying your behavior. If so, you're going to enjoy this video. I'm going to cover the top 6 ways I avoid getting defensive in my relationship as a couples therapist. And the most important point is the one I'm going to cover at the end, so be sure to watch the entire video. If you'd like my free PDF on how to rebuild your marriage in 90 days, comment the word PDF in the comments and I'll send it to you. So several years ago, my wife made the complaint that I was working too much and it was compromising our ability to have quality time together, which is a high need for her. And so when I received that feedback, I took it, I said, thank you for the feedback, and then I mulled it over the next day. And I'm going to walk you through 6 things that I thought about. The first thing I had to remind myself was my progress. I had recently just scheduled us to have a weekend getaway, so I had to remind myself that this complaint that I was overworking was not all my fault, because I had just recently scheduled a weekend getaway for her and I to have some quality time together. Number 2, it wasn't all my fault that I was overworking, because I was raised working a lot. Growing up, we were constantly doing yard work. We were staining the fences, washing the cars, digging holes, planting things, vacuuming, you name it. I was raised in an environment where we worked a lot. And because of that, it's in my nature. So therefore, I tend to work a lot as an adult. That was another reason why it wasn't all my fault that I was overworking. And I had to remind myself of that. The third thing I had to remind myself of, so I wouldn't get defensive, is that there was also circumstances contributing to my overworking. The main circumstance is we had kids going to college and I didn't want them to go into debt because it took me 20 years to pay off my student loans and I didn't want them to go through the same thing. And so I was working extra hard so that our kids could go through college without having debt when they were finished. So that was my circumstance contributing to my overworking. Therefore, I had to remind myself, this is not all my fault. She had a tendency to work on her computer when I would be available. I would be finished with work, I'd come out and I'd be ready to spend time together. But then because she wasn't done with her work, she'd be working on her laptop when we were watching programs, when we were trying to hang out. So I had to remind myself, this is not all my fault, because my wife's also doing something that's making this worse. I had to remind myself about my wife's upbringing. She was raised on the beach, having barbecues in Hawaii, relaxing, having a good time. That was not her fault. That's just how she was raised. But what that means is that her background is influencing how much it impacts her when I work too much. Because when I work too much and I'm overworking, that's in direct opposition to how she was raised. It's violating a value that she was raised with. So that was another angle I had to remind myself of, to remember that this is not all my fault so I don't become defensive. It also has to do with my wife's upbringing, relaxing, going to the beach, and that's influencing how she's experiencing me overworking. Once I finished reflecting on how this complaint that I was overworking was not all my fault because of my progress, because of my upbringing, because of my circumstances, because of things my wife was doing that was contributing, because of her upbringing. So once I reminded myself of all of those things, it lowered my defense walls so that I could do the number 1 step, which is considering the kernel of truth in her feedback. Look at how small that kernel is. That's what you're looking for in the feedback from your partner. You're looking for, what is the piece here that is accurate? When your partner gives you feedback, it doesn't mean it's all correct. Your partner may have a sensitivity that they're projecting onto you, but you can guarantee that there probably is a kernel of truth. But it's hard to consider that kernel until you've gone through all those other steps I've just mentioned. So the number 1 thing to think about so that you don't get defensive is, what is the kernel of truth? So when I reflected on my wife's feedback that I was overworking, the discernment I came to, the kernel of truth, is that I do have a tendency to get obsessive around work because I love helping couples, I love developing resources, and I can get obsessive in my thinking with business goals, thinking 3 to 5 years out, and that's all I talk about at times. So even though there was progress, even though I have stuff in my upbringing, even though there were circumstances, even though my wife was contributing, even though my wife has her background that's influencing how she's experiencing my work, there is a kernel of truth that I can become obsessive with my work and it's all I think and talk about. And I can see how that would be taxing for my wife. I can see how that would compromise our quality time together. That's what I can own, and that's what I can control, and that's what I can work on. And following those sequence of steps helps me avoid getting defensive. And if you try it in your relationship, it can help you too. Do you have active resentments in your relationship? Do you feel more like siblings than lovers? Are you starting to feel lost and you're not quite sure which way to go? If you answered yes, I highly recommend you go through my ER Marriage Intensive. My ER is going to help you and your partner work through your resentments one at a time in a calm and constructive way. If you'd like to learn more, comment the word ER and I'll send you the link. If you found value in today's video, be sure to like it, subscribe, and share it with one other person. Hit the share button, send it to a friend, a colleague, a family member, anybody that you know could probably benefit from having less defensiveness in their relationship. Also, be sure to leave your questions. What do you want to ask me about? What do you want to pick my brain on? Anything is fair game regarding relationships and marriage, so leave your questions in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to watch this one next. See you in the next one.